This past Shabbat may have been the scariest Shabbat of my life. But not for the reasons you guys would think that it's the scariest Shabbat. You would think, well, because the past 48 hours have been an emotional roller coaster. We entered Shabbat thinking, along with the rest of the country, that we may be on the brink of all-out nuclear war. Because, in the wake of Israel's very bold attack, Israel hasn't admitted to it, but Israel also hasn't denied it. When they took out Iran's top-ranking military brass, its top general, at its consulate in Syria. And then Iran responded and said that a direct attack on Israel was imminent. And so many people in Israel and around the world felt like Armageddon could really just be happening this past Shabbat. I tended not to, I was open to it, but I tended not to really think so because I've come to understand Iran. You remember when Trump was like, he died like a dog, a scared little dog, and he took out Qasem Soleimani? You remember, it's like, oh, Trump is enraging the Iranians. What did they do? Nothing. And I think that they assume that if Israel is willing to take out their top general, then that means Israel took into account that they may retaliate, and Israel's ready for their retaliation. And so bottom line is they weren't going to attack, but you just never know. And a lot of people, it was heavy on the hearts, on the minds of a lot of people, and it was on my mind and heart as well. But I tried to enter Shabbat being as ready as I could, but not wanting to give them a win by having it negatively affect me. We had our weapons ready. Our communication devices were on and at arm's length. There were people in synagogue Friday night that I saw that had their phones in their back pockets. They weren't on their phones, but they had them there ready, and it's okay. That is permissible to do if it is for protecting life and for safety reasons. I didn't have it, but that was just my own decision. But we had everything ready. But in the end of the day, it's in Hashem's hands, and there's honestly nowhere in the world that I would feel safer than at our farm in the hills of Judea. But the atmosphere in the country was tense, and there's no two ways about it. We even lost water at the farm for the last few hours before Shabbat, and I thought it may have been some sort of sabotage on the water system in Israel, because they're talking about cyber attacks, the electricity, the water. It turned out it was just a burst pipe from a couple settlements over, and it came back right before Shabbat. But anyways, Shabbat began, and the Abramowitz family had some special guests that we just love so much. And there was Torah and singing and jokes and blessings and good food, and my children were in just, I would say, in rare form, but it's not rare. They're just constantly so delicious. It was just a very special Shabbat. Now, to the reason it was so scary. So in the morning, we went to services in our house of prayer at the farm, and we all ate lunch together at Jeremy and Tehila's home. And after lunch, I was sitting outside talking to Jeremy, and my little boy Shiloh, who was sitting in my lap, Shiloh, whose soul is an extension of my own soul. I just delight in him so much. I just want to be around him. I just want to hang out with him. Anyways, he was sitting on my lap, and Jeremy was eating a little clementine orange, and Shiloh was asking for it. And so Jeremy generously gave us half of the orange. And I took out one of the slivers there, and I was pulling the seeds out from the top with my teeth and leaving the sliver intact, which I knew from experience was of the highest importance for Shiloh. Like the highest importance, like meltdown city, if the sliver of the orange is not intact. Anyways, I gave him the sliver of the orange, and within about 15 seconds, Jeremy shouted, Ari, he's not breathing, he's choking. And I turned him around, and he was thrashing around, and he couldn't breathe at all. There was no sound coming out there's no wheezing or gasping, no air. And I immediately flipped him over and started yelling and hitting his back in an upward motion, like this upper back. I was shouting, Chaya, Chaya. Chaya is a woman who lives with us on the farm who's a medic. And I'm in full-fledged total panic, slamming Shiloh's back. And then Jeremy just pounces into action, and he jams his finger into Shiloh's mouth, which I was told not to do because it could further lodge the food into the throat. And then I guess he just got it with his nail or something, and he starts pulling the orange out, and it It was so long, it just seemed like it would never end. And I think it was the translucent peel, that separates the slivers of orange from each other, that was choking him, and it just blocked the airway totally. And so he pulls it out, and she goes like, just gasps for air, and he was okay.
And Jeremy saved the day.
The truth is that I didn't really think he saved the day. I had blocked it out. And then as the dust started settling and I was going through it in my head, I was having flashes of remembering. And yeah, I mean, talk about, I already feel so indebted to Jeremy for so much of the goodness and happiness in my life. And then he saves the life of, like, how much can I be indebted to a guy? You know?
Well, let me tell you, the reason why you should be indebted is because you took a very stressful scenario and you made it so much more stressful with your panicking and
Oh, I'm
yelling and
sorry that I
fire.
overreacted. I'm sorry I overreacted to my son not breathing. Anyways,
But you should know that the trick is that if it's like a little candy that gets stuck, so then you could like kind of like hit it out. But it was like this long slivery thing. You gotta pull that thing out because I don't think that would have just like popped out. You gotta like get
no.
in there and then pull it out. It was like this long, all the
Yeah, yeah.
orange and the
No, it was
it
longer
was
than that.
serious.
It was longer than that. And I think you're right. I don't think listen, it happened as it should have happened, but I'm not sure that my back thing would have done the trick. Anyways, so he takes the grass from her. He's okay. He cried a little bit, and I just held him tight, so tight, and just hugged him and kissed him. I don't remember if I was crying. I must have been crying. But within that single moment, I've never felt so terrified, nor have I ever been so cripplingly grateful within within 1 minute of time. Honestly, I'm still I don't know if I'll ever fully recover from that. But there I was on the Shabbat when our eyes were all facing the great existential danger of Iran and Russia and Syria. And little did I know that the real threat wasn't Iran. It was in an orange peel. So in this week's Torah portion, Moshe's brother, right, Aaron, the newly appointed high priest of Israel, he did not fare as fortunately as I did. Right? He lost both of his sons right before his eyes. Right? And Nadav and Avihu, the sons of Aaron, took each of them his censer and put fire in it and put incense on it and offered strange fire before the Lord, which he commanded them not. And there went out a fire from the Lord and devoured them, and they died before the Lord. So the circumstances were different, that's true, but ultimately, they were only the circumstances. The difference is that Aaron lost his sons before his eyes, and Baruch Hashem, I did not lose mine. But in both cases, in all the cases, everything's from Hashem. And so how did Aaron respond to this devastating loss? I don't think I've ever had such reverence for his response as this Shabbat, where I went through this and experienced what it could have been that. It could have been that. And how did Aaron respond? Then Moses said to Aaron, "This is what the Lord spoke, saying, I will be sanctified in them that come near me, and before all peoples I will be glorified." And Aaron held his peace. Vayidom Aharon. Vayidom, I don't know if I would say Aaron held his peace. He was silent. He did not scream and rage and protest. Wasn't a victim. He was silent. And his silence is considered as his praise. The Torah tells us, "You shall not kindle flame in your dwellings on the Sabbath." And while the simple translation is obviously true, that one should not light a fire on Shabbat, the Hasidic sages, they teach us another dimension, right? They say, don't kindle the flames of anger in your dwelling places, right? Don't light a fire. Don't become angry in your dwelling places because, as you know, anger is likened to fire. And when anger is in your heart, there's no room for Hashem in there too, because anger is likened to idolatry. Because anger is saying, I know what should be happening right now, and what's happening right now is not what should be happening now because I know what should be happening now. Rather than saying the truth, which is whatever is happening now is exactly what Hashem wants to happen now, and it's from Him, and only from Him. And I will accept it, and I'll learn from it, and I'll grow from it, because if it's from God, it's from a place of love, and if it's beyond my vessels of being able to receive this light or even to fathom how any of this could be goodness, then at the very least, Vayidom Aharon, I will be silent. And that's why Aaron's response is so holy, because on the one hand, he didn't react with anger or uncontrollable grief. That behavior, it would be beneath the dignity and the level of faith that we would expect from the high priest of Israel. But on the other hand, he is human, right? And his heart was undoubtedly torn to pieces, so he remains silent. And I really think that, all things considered, that's the most that we could possibly expect from a human being of flesh and blood. And that silence, I think, is considered a sanctification of God's name and a reflection of Aaron's greatness in his faith. And I'm far from sure that if, God forbid, I was in that situation and things turned out differently with Shiloh and that orange peel, that I would have been able to respond with that sort of equanimity. But what I can say is that since the event, I've been overcome and overwhelmed with even more gratitude than I can describe in words. I don't know if you empathize with this or identify, but Shana can't believe it. Every 20 minutes, maybe it sounds crazy, but I go, ugh. I just keep replaying it in my head, ugh, just like what could have been, the horror of that. And then I emerge from that replay in my head. I don't know if that's PTSD or whatever, and I'm just overcome with so much gratitude, more than I can describe in words. Because having a happy marriage and 3 children who I adore has filled me with so much gratitude that it often feels like there isn't room for any more. I'm maxed out. And then this happened with Shiloh, and what do you know? It turns out there's room for even more gratitude. So much gratitude that I found myself yearning for a Beit HaMikdash, for a temple in which I can go and offer a Korban Todah, a sacrifice of gratitude, a thanksgiving offering. And as we learned last week, we discussed it last week, the Thanksgiving offering was unique in that there were 40 loaves of bread that needed to be consumed in just 2 days. And the construct of this offering lent itself to throwing a feast for family and friends who would help consume these 40 loaves of bread in such a short amount of time. And this big feast filled with family and friends that were helping you to consume this Thanksgiving offering, this would give the person offering this Thanksgiving sacrifice the opportunity to share the miracle of God for which they are so grateful. So in my grief, there is no temple that I can offer the sacrifice in. But I have arranged that for tomorrow at the synagogue in Efrat that I pray in, it's called Shirat David, and it's led by Rav Shlomo Katz, where I pray tomorrow. There's a Torah lesson that Jeremy and I attend religiously at Monday and Wednesday mornings after prayer service. So I've arranged that I'm bringing 40 bagels to share with my wonderful friends there, in which I can open my heart and pour out my gratitude before the Creator of heaven and earth for the great kindness and compassion He showed me and my family, that He saved the life of my little boy Shiloh. And it's true that my heart really is just so yearning to offer the sacrifice in the temple, but we're not there yet. But I wanted to invite all of you, my friends and my family, that is this fellowship. You are all invited. I know it's like, oh, thanks, Ari, you're inviting us to a kiddush in Judea with 40 bagels. Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. And it's a wholehearted invitation. And if you can make it, it would be a great honor to have all of you from the fellowship participate in this Thanksgiving offering. If there's any chance you'd be able to come, reach out to me and I'll tell you how to get there. Anyways, Jeremy, thank you for saving my boy's life. And thank you all in this fellowship for adding a whole new dimension of meaning to my life. And thank you, Hashem, for friends like Jeremy, for friends and family like this fellowship. And I'm just so filled with love and gratitude. Shalom, my friends. Thank you.